After 773 days, Stewie 2K has finally returned to a Tier 1 Counter-Strike LAN. He's playing as a stand-in for G2 Esports at IEM Dallas, which is currently ongoing. But where has Stewie been? How did this all happen? And is he back for good? So if you aren't sure where Stewie 2K has been, let me get you quickly up to speed here. The last time he played a Tier 1 CS LAN was the Americas RMR for the PGL Antwerp Major when he was part of Evil Geniuses. This was April 2022, and a few months after that, Stewie actually became a streamer for EG, stepping down from the main roster. Later that year, Stu played a bunch of Valorant events, including the VCL qualifiers, where he was part of a team called The Nation and made top 32, although they didn't ultimately qualify. Then in March 2023, he was dropped by EG and he streamed for about another year. But he was drawn back into competitive Counter-Strike 2 months ago by Legacy, a Brazilian team that had just benched Coldzera and was looking to add experience to their otherwise young roster. Stewie joined as a stand-in.
I look at this Legacy team and I see a lot of young players with a lot of talent and not enough experience. And hopefully I can bring that and, see what's wrong with them.
Then on May 7th, Dust2 reported that Stewie was on G2's list of potential stand-ins to replace Hooksy for IEM Dallas. The IGL had his sister's wedding to attend, and the report said that this was not a step to get rid of Hooksy, but just a scheduling conflict. Ultimately, this report was confirmed when the rosters were submitted to ESL, and also by Stewie himself on Twitter. But why did G2 specifically go for Stewie here? Basically, the short answer is that he fills the entry fragger role that Hooksy plays for G2 typically.
It is strange, but in this situation, it's like, who do you get, as a player? You don't really want a young and up-and-coming player. You want someone who can fit role-wise. That is Stewie. He does that sort of a thing, he is the tip of the spear.
The longer answer appears to be that other more natural replacements like Jax, who has played for G2 before, were unavailable. In his specific case, Jax had played with a random mix in a qualifier, and that made him ineligible. That brings us to now. IEM Dallas started on May 27th, so we've already got a couple of games under our belts for most teams. Side note, just so you know, they changed Vertigo a lot before this tournament, and they are playing on that patch at IEM Dallas. So just bear in mind that if you see weird map vetoes, that might be why. How does the addition of Stewie 2K change G2 Esports? Well, logistically, Nico has already confirmed in an interview that he will be doing the IGLing for this event, which leaves Stu free to just focus on the entry thing.
So how is this working? Does Stewie just take over and try to call his way, or who's doing it?
No, I'll be taking over the IGL. That makes more sense. It would be stupid for Jake to come over, or for any IGL to just come over and kind of try to call.
At the same time, losing your IGL before an event like this means that expectations will understandably just be lower.
Usually, for any team, at any point, in any universe, losing your IGL ahead of an event should be a terrible thing. We should all be talking about, oh no, how are they gonna do? They don't have their leader, it's gonna fall apart. And there's something in the air.
If Stewie were in peak form, and now that we've got Nico IGLing for this event, it might be possible to say something like G2 has packed even more firepower into this roster. Ultimately, it gives us this look at a weird alternate G2, even if we don't totally know how all the pieces fit together. If it all goes wrong, there isn't that much to worry about because G2 has already said that they're committed to bringing Hooksy back afterward.
I haven't played with the standing for a while, and I think that lifts some pressure off your shoulders. So yeah, we are looking to enjoy this event, and obviously we're going to try to do our best.
But if Stu puts on a good performance, could we see him starting on a new roster soon? Let's look at the games first. G2 first played Falcons, who are going through some problems of their own right now, and their matchup was a BO1 on Anubis. When we saw Stewie live on the stage for the first time, chat got pretty hype. Ultimately, I do think that Stewie did what he needed to do for G2 in this game. He was doing the entry thing, playing some weird off angles, and trying to get himself involved as much as possible. He wasn't the hero, that was definitely Monacy in that game, but he slotted in effectively and did what the team expected him to do, which is really what you want from a stand-in after all. So G2 did beat Falcons with a stand-in, and whether that says more about Falcons or G2, I leave up to you. For me, Falcons looked not great. Sure, it's a BO1, and they didn't get stomped. But if you can't beat G2 with a stand-in, then it really puts the difficulty of the climb ahead of this team into sharp perspective. There were tons of slow rounds that just sort of fizzled out for Falcons, and the game sort of became one of those Sun Pius has to carry games, and they weren't able to complete the comeback like they sometimes can. There were some weird mistakes too that shocked even G2 and really makes you wonder what's going on in comms. Anyways, the win in that match meant that their second match of the day, a best of 3, would be against Team Vitality. Here, we got a better contest and a better idea of how good this version of the G2 roster actually is. Vitality is currently ranked number 3 in the world, and while they did have a very shaky game against Monty to start this tournament, they did play like the world number 3 against G2. Map 1, which was on Dust 2, was even at the half before Vitality won 7 straight T rounds to just run away with it. And Anubis finished with a similar scoreline as Spinks, and Flamesy went off for Vitality. So what does this mean for Stewie? Sure, he's got at least one more series to play at IEM Dallas, but what could this mean for his future as a player? Well, on the one hand, I don't think Stewie was really the reason that G2 lost those games, but on the other hand, I don't think he really stood out either. And who knows, maybe that's a good thing because he's just trying to fill this role that G2 needs him to fill. We haven't really seen that much competitive CS2 from Stewie, and he's theoretically at least been available for teams to inquire about for some time. Whether this is a last dance or the start of something new is really up to Stu at the end of the day. More than anything though, it was just cool to see the guy playing CS on LAN, on home soil no less, and to have the fans hyping him up as well. If you are a fan of NACS, then you probably want to see more Stu. We do too, so we'll keep an eye on it and let you know if there are any developments. The map vetoes are wild right now, guys, because people are just like, hey, let's try Dust 2. Well, we all know how to play Dust 2, right? Literally everybody thinks that Dust 2 favors them right now, seemingly. Like, it's a good time to watch Counter-Strike if you want to watch people do, you know, some Dust 2 pub stomp type strats.